wonderful world of teaching religious education in a Catholic primary school. As a religious educator, you have been called to a unique and special vocation. Catholic schools strive in their attempts to develop the whole child and are unique because they are centred on Jesus Christ. They are based on the belief that their students will develop the wisdom and truth that will lead them into a worldview that is infused with gospel values and Catholic traditions. Religious education allows children the opportunity to witness and experience Christianity. So, why is the teaching of religious education so important?
I think religion's important to learn at school because it teaches you that God and Jesus are always with you, and it teaches you how to live your life in a really good way like Jesus did.
Religious education is important as it is a way of passing on to our children our beliefs, values and traditions. However, religious education is much more than that. It's an education in faith and in life. Religion is a way of life and being because it affects how you relate to people and the environment. So children are educated to understand Jesus in the context of their everyday life, living the gospel wherever they are, so they can make valued choices in their lives. Faith, the belief in God and yourself, gives a person hope, and that is what life is all about.
Understand how and why we teach religious education, we must first of all look at where we have come from. What has happened in religious education in the past that forms where we are today and where we need to go. In Australia, there have been some huge shifts that have taken place in the teaching of religious education in schools. The first major approach that was undertaken in Australia was that of the dogmatic approach, that was dominant right up until the early 1960s. It was an approach which took on the view of the teacher knowing everything and the pupil nothing, and involved the word-for-word memorisation of the catechism. It was thought at the time, however, that the learning of the knowledge would lead to a religious socialisation, where the knowledge memorised would then inspire students to become practising and devout Catholics. Negative outcomes were, though, in the end, destined to outweigh the positives. Gallagher, in 2001, talked very clearly about the desire by many in the early 1900s to focus more on understanding rather than memorisation. The next big movement in religious education in Australia was that of the charismatic movement. These pedagogical reforms created a shift away from memorisation and rote learning, as they emphasised that the catechetical material should not only be imprinted on the child's memory, but also be grasped by the understanding. One of the strengths of this approach was the introduction of the text My Way to God in 1964. The text aimed to engage the student through more appropriate language and illustrations. This approach, however, was also, in the end, seen as limited in its ability to inspire young Catholics to take an active role in their faith, and so the life experience approach was introduced. This approach was a more student-centred method with a focus on applying faith to contemporary living. Post-1970s, we saw the development of the catechetical approach. Its aim was to conserve the traditions of the Church and bring about the liberation of the world. We also saw the introduction of the phenomenological approach, aimed to enhance understanding and tolerance between religions, as it was very much a comparative study of religion. And the educational approach, which opened up the possibility of a distinction between catechesis and classroom religion teaching. And so we find ourselves now, in 2012, trying to find that middle ground, where we still teach the traditions and teachings of the Church, while engaging our students and encouraging them to live like Jesus and take an active role in their faith. Which leads us to now, and the theories of Gabriel Moran. Gabrielle Moran proposes a two-strand process to the teaching of religious education. Number 1, teaching people religion, and number 2, teaching people to be religious. He states that the whole of religious education is not a terribly complex project. It requires that the teacher knows which of the two processes we are engaged in at a particular time and place. The teacher that Moran refers to is not necessarily a sole person at the front of a group of students. This term teacher may also refer to the community from which the student and teacher come, and the environment in which the learning is taking place. He also makes mention of the differences between the noun religion and the adjective religious. The term religion refers to the actual subject being taught and learnt. The expression religious is the label for a set of practices within a religious community. As religious educators, Moran sums up our role by stating that the teacher needs to know which of the two processes he or she is teaching at any one time. He states that the tragedy would be that for the lack of distinction, institutions end up doing neither. This does not imply, however, that there is not a crossover of the two processes when you are a teacher in a Catholic primary classroom. At our school, St Agnes Primary, although there are many activities that clearly belong to one of the two processes, there are many, both in and out of the classroom, that you will be embarking on to provide our students with a holistic religious education. And these activities, therefore, teach both the subject matter of religious education as well as how to be religious in the student's everyday life. The central part of the first of the two processes, the teaching of religion, is the curriculum that is taught in religious education classes in the classroom. The religious education curriculum that is used at St Agnes Primary and across the whole of the Lismore Diocese is also used within the Archdiocese of Sydney and the Diocese of Armidale and Wollongong. The RE curriculum is supported by the resource student text To Know, Worship and Love, which was first produced in the Archdiocese of Melbourne. It is a curriculum model which meets the challenge and the vision of an education in faith perspective. Central to the K-12 guidelines is the integration and celebration of the sharing of personal stories within the story of Jesus and the Church. The theology in the RE curriculum and the To Know, Worship and Love text is integrated within the Catechism of the Catholic Church. Within the classroom, there is also the teaching of traditional prayers, structure, stories, history, morality and ethics of the Catholic tradition. This then easily leads into the second of the two strands, the teaching of how to be religious and how to live out the message of Jesus in the student's everyday life. We pray together as a class at many points through the day and teach the children how to do this in their own time as well. In the primary school setting, there is a huge focus on Moran's second strand, that of teaching our students how to live religiously. This is extremely important as it allows the children to take on what they have learnt in the classroom and apply it to their everyday lives. In doing this, however, we must always make sure that the activities we are doing are linked back to the traditions and teachings of the Church, so that the students understand why they themselves and other Catholics take part in these activities, and that is to live out their lives as Jesus wants them to. Through the sacraments, the students are taking part in their faith and progressing on their Catholic journey. They learn about the sacrament that they are undertaking through the classroom activities and catechesis, but take part in the actual act of the sacrament on a voluntary basis. We have many programs running in our school that support the religious life and development of our students and help them to start to make decisions in their own lives based on their faith and spirituality. The Restorative Justice Program is a program that encourages students to take responsibility for their own actions. The Making Jesus Real program also encourages students to take the teachings of Jesus that they learn as part of the curriculum and prayer and make it real in the playground, social groups, and in their home lives. Both these programs are also heavily highlighted through the School Creative Arts program. Students use drama, music, art, and dance to reflect the themes that they have learnt through these programs. The Seasons for Growth program is a voluntary program that encourages students to work their way through grief and incorporates the students' faith and trust in God. Charity is also a big focus at St Agnes, and all students are encouraged to participate on some level to help those in need. We have a Mini Vinnies program, which is a committee of volunteer students who want to help those less fortunate than themselves. These students organise fundraisers, take part in activities such as the Vinnies Winter Appeal and Operation Christmas Child. Students also visit retirement villages and homes for the elderly on a regular basis. Through these activities, our students are encouraged to live a religious life, helping those that may not be as fortunate as themselves. Each class also takes part once a term in one of the weekday masses, either at the church or at the retirement village chapel up the road from the school. This encourages our students to regularly attend Mass and to take an active role in their local parish. At St Agnes we have meditation and reflective spaces within the school, such as the Quiet Space, which is on once a week in the music room. This is simply an opportunity for students to take time out of their own lunchtimes and come and sit and be with God. A prayer focus area is set up, the lights are turned off, and quiet music is played. The students can draw, write, or simply sit and think about something that they need to spend time with God about. Once a semester, each class is also in charge of preparing Monday morning prayer for the rest of the school. Classes are encouraged to take what they are learning about in their classroom religion time and create a prayer that is relevant to them and has a connection to them and their relationship with God. As you can see, your role at St Agnes Primary School is not just that of teaching the Australian curriculum. It is also to take on the role of religious educator. In a time when the majority of children are not attending Mass with their families outside of school hours, it is our role to provide an environment where the students not only learn about religion, but also an environment where both students and their families can feel comfortable in their learning of how to live a religious life and carry out the true meaning of Catholicism in their everyday lives.